Welcome to the Sur-thrival Guide podcast, a short series of daily impactful episodes full of ideas and tips on how to thrive in survival mode during the corona crisis. Every weekday, with the help of a special guest expert, we'll be exploring different tools to add to your Sur-thrival toolkit. So strap yourselves in and get ready to be inspired as we show you the way to Sur-thrival. Welcome everybody to the Sur-thrival Guide podcast. I'm Mark Stavina, former professional rugby player and now leadership consultant for Winning EQ. And before I go any further, I just want to make sure that everybody has downloaded their copy of the Sur-thrival Guide ebook. It's yours free. Click the link or just go straight to winningeq.com right now and get your copy. And please pass the link on to friends, family, work colleagues as well, anybody that just could use a little lift and some guidance right now. And this podcast is based on the ebook, and the intention is to provide some tips, some ideas, concepts, anything to help you thrive during this coronavirus pandemic. And now I know for some people, for most people, that might seem a little unrealistic or even impossible. I get it. We're all experiencing this in our own way. We're all experiencing the hardships that this is imposing upon us. But I invite you right now just to do your best to see the opportunities and find the opportunities to thrive and change or form new thoughts, behaviors, and habits, basically patterns in your life that will help you flourish when this passes, and this will pass. Well, today's a very special episode. We talk about all areas of your life, and this one is for the business leaders out there. This is an episode about business leadership during the crisis, and we have an expert as well to speak upon that. Now, this guest I've had the pleasure of working with. He is the CEO of Feedonomics, one of the leaders in the e-commerce space. And Shawn is also a friend of mine, Shawn Lipman. Feedonomics, I'll get him to talk about it a little bit more. They have grown rapidly in around 5 years. He can give me the correct dates on that, but they have grown up to 160 plus employees. It changes every day. And they have 5, 6 satellite operations around the world as well, including the Philippines and Australia. Again, as you're watching this, it's probably become 7 or 8. They're growing that rapidly. And what I love about Feedonomics, and especially Shawn's leadership, is that it is a culture-led business. And he can speak to you more about that as well, which is especially important when you build a business on your culture. At times like these, you rely on that culture and the people that make up that culture. One of my favorite business leaders, the late great Herb Kelleher, former CEO of Southwest Airlines, he said, if you take care of your people, they will take care of you. And that was especially important when they went through a number of crises, including straight after 9/11. Well, without any further ado, I want to welcome my guest, Shawn Lipman. Shawny.
Hey, Mark.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us and taking the time to just give us your wisdom and experience in business leadership.
Well, it'll be a short interview, but look at
And I must mention this guy he's a comedian as well, which also helps. I did think of that when choosing my business leadership guest. Well, Shawn, obviously we're going to speak a lot about your experience and knowledge. It's not just Feedonomics. You've got extensive experience in business, and you've owned other businesses, and you've been an investor and entrepreneur for many, many years, including a former athlete yourself. And yes, rugby. Okay, it takes one to know one. I know I've had a few rugby players or former rugby players on my podcast, but I think that also lends itself to your leadership skills. So before we go into the business side of things, just give the people out there an idea of what a typical day in lockdown is like for Shawn Lipman.
Well, we about 6 weeks in now, so the routine is starting to become embedded, I think. And from our perspective, we went on full lockdown about 6 weeks ago, about a week before it was mandated. and we've done really, really well. So as a company, 160 people all over the world, we had about 70% of our people in our corporate offices in LA. And so we did have to get everybody home. But obviously, we'd be just exceptionally busy. Dealing with the initial kind of taking stock of what COVID was going to do to us, how it was going to affect our customers, how it was going to affect our employees. We had a COVID scare really early on, where we thought that one of our people had it. They got admitted to hospital over about a 4-day period. We didn't know, and so we didn't know if we had an exposure. And so it was crazy for the first 4 weeks. Contingency planning. What are we going to do? We started having some attrition of our client base. Definitely clients that are in industries that are struggling, bricks and mortar, travel, auto, and then there was a bit of a settling period. So I would say that for the first 4 weeks, it was working. It was working 16 to 18 hours a day at least, just back-to-back meetings. And a big part of that was trying to touch base with all our people. And so I was literally trying to have one-on-one meetings with as many of the people in the company as I possibly could to let them know, because suddenly we all went remote. And it was like, we got to make sure we're talking to everybody and not allowing people to just be in this kind of this floating with their anxieties, even though we didn't really know how pronounced or dramatic this change was going to be. And I'd say over the last 2 weeks, we've got into what we consider as a new normal, which is the running of the day-to-day business. And so the days start, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, depending on the calls. I'm involved in a lot. So I do a lot of internal meetings with all our team leaders and all our directors and managers. And then I also get involved with one of the key elements of what I would recommend is you got to be in touch with your clients. You have to be speaking to your clients. The irony is that you probably need to be doing all of this stuff pre-COVID, but there's been a bright light on the need to what's going on with our clients. How is this affecting them? How can we help them? And so I've been on a lot of calls with clients, and then obviously a lot of meetings with our people. And that's back to back. So from the minute I wake up, try my oatmeal and coffee, and then I'm into the meetings. And then I try by, now it's darker later, so I try and get a walk with my wife, take the dogs for a walk, try and get a bit of a workout, use the workout to watch the news. I try and stay as away from watching nonstop news as possible, but I try to take an hour at the end of the day to just get a bit of a workout and use that as an opportunity just to kind of catch up on some of the news of the day. And then just try and decompress as much as I can in the evening, trying to stay away from drinking too much wine and beer during the week.
How's that working out for you?
I'll give myself about a B-. I go into the week with very good intentions. Monday, Tuesday, I'm champion. Wednesday, depending on how the week's going, but no, it's all good. And then the weekends, just try and shut down as much as I can, to the extent that I can, and go on long hikes and just try and decompress and then hit it. So getting into a new normal right now.
Thanks for sharing, Shawn, especially giving us an insight into the home life and the balance that you're striking. Again, I speak about it in the ebook, and you touched on a lot of points that the book does as well. The need for balance. You have your morning routine. You're putting in exercise. You know the importance of that and the escape. And something else you mentioned there was trying not to be inundated with the news. There's so much fake news out there. I mentioned that really briefly as well, of people might tend to want to go down the rabbit hole into all the extra news, like conspiracy theories and basically things out of their control, which can add to their anxiety without even realizing it. So what I heard from you is you try not to do that, because you're just trying to control what you can control. And you have a lot to control right now as a business leader, and you have your people to worry about. So that was a great insight into what's going on. And another question I have for you, because you always have a really fantastic view and realistic view of just the world in general and what's going on. This whole pandemic, from generally speaking terms, what is kind of like the shadow that you see in this in any regard, and then the light as well? So the negative, if you will, of this whole pandemic, but what are the opportunities or the light that you also see out of what's happened in the last 6 weeks?
Yeah, Mark, I think you got to recognize it for what it is. I think if you try and rationalize it as being something that is relatively normal and you got to just deal with it, I think you'll make the wrong decisions. I think the critical thing is to recognize it for a generational, more than generational event that's affected the whole world in a dramatic way. And I think if you downplay that, you'll make some bad decisions. So first of all, it's kind of like the rules of acceptance, right? First, you got to accept it for what it is, and it's a big deal. And only once you can come to terms with that, can you then come up with strategy and approach to how you deal with it. You got to know that you're in untested times. They don't teach how to lead a company, an organization, a family through a worldwide pandemic and global shutdown. I mean, that's not in the. It will maybe be in the business school in the future, but it's not there now. So you got to recognize that you're in uncharted territory, and the only way you get through it is by going into your bag of tricks from your life. You got to go and you got to look to what are those building blocks that you've got from what got you to this stage in your life. And then you got to say, I've got to dig really deep into that bag of tricks and basically now go and put all of that in place. And so if you're coming into this on a really poor foundation, whether it be as a company, a poor cultural foundation, or a foundation that's not really based on a lot of trust, I think you got a lot of challenges, because if you're trying to mobilize people to all go in a certain direction, they got to trust. They've got to trust, which means that you've got to communicate with them, and you got to hope that you would come in on a strong foundation of trust to begin with. Mm-hmm. And so for us, fortunately, everything we've done since we started Feedonomics, even from the time it was just the original partners, which was just the four of us, we said, what are we going to stand for? Who are we going to be? Are we just out there to build technology and sell it? Or do we want to stand for something bigger? And we didn't know if we were going to grow and what we're going to do. And from day one, we did. Part of it came from my background running other culture-based companies and being a captain of athletic teams and being a coach, whether it be at Pee-wee level or at international level. The teams that always sort of thrived were the ones that were founded on really, really strong cultural alignment and a strong set of values and principles. And so coming into the pandemic, that was a massive part of what we focused on at Feedonomics. And seeing, 3,000% growth since we started, or, tremendous growth, that we would be speaking as much about trust, accountability, what our principles are, servant leadership from day one. And so then going into a lockdown where you've got everybody working from home, we found that really created a foundation to align and coalesce the people around a common goal. And we've tried as best we can to alleviate people's anxiety. You have to, empathy is a critical part of emotional intelligence. And you have to put yourself in the shoes of the people who are working for you. And they're dealing with loved ones dying. We've got people in our company who their loved ones have died, grandparents, parents, spouses. We have some of our people who have got it. We have one of our people that has been in ICU for 5 weeks. A miracle story that I could speak for hours about. And so we're dealing with all of these things, and the key is to identify them, deal with your sense of loss, because everybody's got a sense of loss right now, whether it's actual loved ones or the loss of their freedom or their sense of a future or their sense of predictability in their careers. They're looking at 25 million people being unemployed in the country. You can't assume they're sitting around not worried about their own jobs. And so we're trying to do everything we can to openly communicate with them, keep open lines of communication, so that as this thing evolves, they don't feel that they're floating around, that we're trying the best we can to keep them in the boat with us, so we all come out on the other end, but also to alleviate some of that anxiety that they have, which is immense in these times.
Yeah, thanks, Shawn. You've obviously read the Sur-thrival Guide ebook, because you...
Basically, everything we're doing is based on the book.
Right. Yes, you're welcome. No, well, I just again reiterate and relay that in what I heard, and in the terms of the book, you talked about acceptance. That's the first. I mean, there's 3 steps that I cover in the book to get you on the path to Sur-thrival. And the first one is acceptance, and the different ways. It's just like, this is it. This is the new normal. If you can't just accept, then it makes it very hard to move forward, to gain clarity of the next step, right? And especially as a business leader, you need clarity. You need to make quick decisions and tough decisions. And if you're stuck in resistance about what's going on, it makes it very hard. And then I talk about assessment, right? So assessing your environment. And what I like about what you said is, in a way, that's assessment. You reflect in and say, what characteristics and leadership skills have I already developed? Do I already have? And I remember you said to me, Shawn, when I asked you how you're doing recently with everything, you got a lot of responsibilities and a lot on your shoulder. It must be tough. And you said to me, I feel like I've been preparing for this moment my whole life. And what I heard in that is, you reflect upon your experiences, team captain, the way that you lead, your principles, your values, and now it's time to bring them all together. And it helps you get through and thrive during this period. So that's assessment. That's self-awareness and self-assessment of like, actually, I can do this. What do I got, and what do I need to step up and step into in order to get through this? And then the final step is action. And you've been constantly putting strategy into action and making sure it's consistent. So thank you for just giving your perspective on what I spoke about in the book, and it's so important that you follow those steps. Now, as we go on, and we'll wrap up soon, I already heard a lot of kind of tips in that on that people can take, an inspiration that team leaders and business leaders can kind of take and apply. But I want to go into that a little bit more, and perhaps if you could condense what you are doing as a leader and what your team leaders are doing into maybe some tips for people out there, 3 to 5 tips on what they can do right now, what they can implement right now, whether it's individually or whether it's for their team, to help them thrive or thrive during this period.
Mark, you've got to trust your leaders. You've got to trust your leaders more than ever before. And so if you're a company that hasn't done a strong enough job, building a strong leadership team, and that's not just vice presidents, it's leaders. Our concept at Philonomics is that leaders are teachers and teachers are leaders, and great leaders make leaders, and it doesn't matter what your title is. And so more so than ever, you've got to rely on people to get up and take care of business and do them in alignment with your principles, which fundamentally is taking care of your customer and taking care of each other. Wow. But you have to trust your people. You have to. You can't go do it all on your own. Definitely, you can't do it anyway, but not from your home. So that's critical. The other thing is, you've got to be laser focused on the detail. There's so much that can fall through the cracks when you've now gone and dissipated your organization. Everybody's at home. There's lots of distraction. People are in just a whole different environment. And so you've got to keep your eye on the detail, whether it be the operational detail or the cultural detail. And so we're very lucky. We brought in a person, we call him a people empowerment manager. Mm-hmm. And his sole job is, it's not to do benefits and HR, it's to be in touch with our people and make sure that our people are aligned. And you're a very big part of helping us do that as well. So we're really putting a focus on our people. And then the other one is attack. There's a concept of fight, flight, or freeze, right? When you have to deal with pressure, humans and people respond in one of those 3 ways. Our approach is going to be to fight. Now, fighting sometimes is you put your head down and you keep punching. What we're trying to do is we're trying to just mobilize around approaching the market in a very, very proactive way. And I'd say that's what every business should do. You can't hunker down, whether you're a restaurant or a beauty salon or you're a technology company. There's going to still be the winners, people that will get through it, the resilient ones. And the resilient ones are the ones that acknowledge, so they understand what they're dealing with, and then they go and they think of the most creative and proactive ways to survive, so that when they come out on the other end, they're going to still be standing and have built a tremendous amount of goodwill with their client base and with their employees. And so you've got to play the long game. There's no such thing as quarterly earnings or quarterly profits. Right now, what you're doing is we do whatever we can to make sure, our customers come through on the other end. Because if you don't focus on that, you've got nobody to actually do business with you. And if you help your customers come out on the other end, the amount of loyalty that you're going to build within your customer base is going to be measurable. And so the biggest advice is play the long game. Obviously, you got to survive, but don't freeze and don't run, but you got to fight. And I think the companies that find, and there's creative ways to do that, whether you run a gym or whether you run a restaurant or a technology company, you got to put yourself in that top 1% of companies that are forward-thinking and innovative and thinking of creative ways to connect with their client base and keep their people. And if you do those two things, I think you've got a great chance of coming out on the other end.
Amazing. Thank you. They're wonderful tips. And what I like about those and that advice is there are some people probably watching or listening going, okay, well, I'm not the CEO of a company of 100 plus people, so this doesn't really, but that's not true. This does apply. If you're a solopreneur right now, okay, you might not be able to relate to that point of empower your people, empower your team, make sure your team are taken care of. That might not apply to you. But the fight sentiment that you shared, and then taking care of your customers and playing the long game. Somebody with their own business right now that they're just self-employed and it's only them. That is a tactic that is very important, to not freeze. I love how you said that. Don't freeze. And actually, you might just have to do the hard yards, there's a sporting term, right now, and build your client base, build trust, build rapport, and faith in what you do and that you're there to support, and you're not looking for money. As you said, you need to figure out a way to survive through that so that you can do that. Because when this passes now, you are in a great position to flourish and people will look at you. You've shared that advice with me as well as a consultant and an independent contractor. So for everybody that's watching and listening, that is great advice to just look into the future and start building your base and your the trust in what you have to offer and your value right now, and you'll be flourishing at the other end of that.
Yeah, what you're doing, with your podcasts and building your credibility and your community and your expertise and sharing your expertise, you could easily have said, well, I'm in a worldwide pandemic. What am I going to do? And so what you're doing is you're continuing to consult, to grow, to help people grow. And you found a different, more innovative way to do it. And I think all businesses can do these types of things. And so you're a living example of how you're not sitting waiting for the pandemic to end to figure out what you do next. You're in it, you're figuring it out, and you're playing, and you do the same thing with us. The way you're even more engaged at a time where we actually need more engagement from people who can help our people with all the things that you do. You're going out of your way to do it, and it's not about how much you get paid or anything. You're saying, I'm going to help you and your people because that's what you guys need right now. And that's the type of long-term loyalty and credibility that you're building. And so you're a living example of somebody who's doing that right now. And I think it's going to pay tremendous dividends for you as you evolve and as this thing plays out.
Oh, thank you, Shawn. Well, this isn't about me. This is all about you and also our audience, how they can learn from you. But I really appreciate that. Thank you. And Yeah, you're right. You just got to get value out there, and the opportunities. I talk about the opportunity and the light that's coming from this whole situation. Is that in taking this approach, if somebody takes the steps that you've offered, just in that by default you are building resilience and you're developing new skills. You might find this, all right, I'm just gonna go and I'm just gonna spring into action and see what happens, instead of waiting it out, instead of adopting a victim kind of mindset and like, all right, why is this? Oh, what am I gonna do? I just need to chill out. No, you are developing new leadership skills and more strings to your bow that you might not thought you had. So that, again, we're talking about on the other side of this, you're going to be better for it. Now, Shawnee, I want to wrap up. Thank you again so much. I always ask our guests, because it's about win-win situations in life, not just during a crisis, but I want to ask you how we can support Shawn Lipman during this pandemic.
Unless you need a technology for facilitating your online shopping, nothing. But one of the interesting things is my dad is going to be 90 years old, and he's a very, very social, very together guy, and been living on his own in an apartment and exceptionally socially isolated, and we're all staying away because of all the risks, etc. And he's been a lifelong singer, and so the thing that's getting him through is he's been getting videotaped from afar singing. He's a Frank Sinatra nut. I think he actually thinks that he's better than Frank Sinatra. But we've been posting videos of him singing a song, once or twice, 3 times a week. And he's building this amazing following online. He gets 200, and he sits and he counts his views and he looks at the comments, and it's keeping him alive. Every day he's got something to look forward to, and it's become his reason for being. And you mentioned it's his dopamine. He's getting his dopamine rush. And so if anyone can just become his friend on Facebook, Joe Lipman, or follow him on Instagram, Zeta Joe, Zeida Joe, or YouTube, Joe Lipman, and just become his mate and help him get through it. And that's the kind of gift you can give, because it's literally like oxygen for him when he gets a like, or when he gets a view, or when he gets a kind comment. It's really helping him get through it.
Thank you, Shawn. We've already had an episode on contribution and kindness, and that can show up in any form, in just the smallest gesture. What a great way to do that, to be kind, to contribute to someone in the smallest way that gives them, might not seem much to us, but it's a massive lift. 90 years old, he's still thriving, he's finding new ways. I mean, what an inspiration. So, Joe Lipman, all right, done. Okay, and I've put all that up on the screen as well for people to follow. So just watch the numbers soar.
It's a shameless plug. I get 20% of everything he makes. So it's my side gig.
Well, it's a shame you just mentioned that, because maybe that's deterred some of our viewers and listeners now. No, that's brilliant, Shawn. And once again, thank you for sharing your wisdom. It's an absolute pleasure as always, and you can go ahead and get on with your busy day.
All right, Mikey, take care.
Thanks a lot, Shawn. Thank you so much once again. Well, there you have it. Shawn Lipman, one of the best in the business of business. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Many, many takeaways to apply right now. Not just if you're a business leader, but if you're a leader in any capacity. If you're leading a household right now, which many of you are, there's some great tips in that as well. Well, thanks for joining us. Make sure you get your copy of the ebook, the Sur-thrival Guide. There it is once again. Go to winningeq.com. Follow Joe Lipman, follow Feedonomics and Shawn Lipman, and I'll see you at the next episode or the one before. Be well, be safe, and thanks for joining us.